Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So I just finished like an 11-hour live stream going over the Runewords today, which was really fun. I also had a visit from the developer that was actually working on the Runewords in Diablo 4, G1, which totally needs his own runes named after him at this point, which I think would be awesome. And we talked with some of the developers. We tested like tons of different builds. I mean, tons of different builds, playing around with tons of stuff. Everything from like Mighty Throw to something as simple as like an Earthquake build to meteorites and all sorts of other stuff. So what are the runes? How do they work? Are they cool? Yes. In short, let me just say, I like the runes. I like them very much. I love them. Like a giddy little schoolgirl when I first saw one of the first effects that was coming over. Now, the runes basically have like three main systems, and we're going to go over the main systems, and we're going to talk about them real quick, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, and we're going to talk about what you could potentially use them for and why I like them so much. So the first thing is you have to know that there are what are called invocation runes. The invocation runes are the thing that is actually giving you the effect. It's the special thing. It's the meat and the potatoes. It's like the teleport from the Enigma. It's the zeal from the rune word in Diablo 2. It's the berserk. It's the shouts from the CTA and so forth and so on. It's the special thing. It's the thing that made the rune word special, right? And so the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to pick the special thing that you want to happen. Now, there are three different qualities of these invocation runes. There is the legendary invocation runes, which usually require a large amount of offering, and we'll get into that later. And then there are also the rare invocation runes, which require a medium to high amount of offering. And then finally, there are the magic runes, which are kind of like the lower tier runes that usually require much less of an offering. Now, do not be fooled, because in my experience, these lesser magic runes tend to be some of the better runes due to a second system within the game, which is called the Overflow system. And you can see it written on the rune where it says Overflow increases the swarms spawned. Or for instance, with the rogue stun grenades, it says Overflow increases the grenade spawn, and so forth and so on. And this overflow effect is actually very effective in general, no pun intended, because, for instance, like with the Sorcerer's Meteorites, if you only have 25 offering required, but we go over to the next step, which is the ones that are actually going to generate you the resource. Now, these are called the ritual runes, and they are distinctly different from the invocation runes, because the invocation runes are pointed down, and as my sister used to say, right up to heaven. Ritual runes up to heaven. That's for the for the turn signal on your car, right up to heaven, left down to hell. So the ones that are pointing upwards are your ritual runes, and these are the things that are actually going to trigger the effect. Now, there's some really, really interesting ones in here, and as you go over them, you'll see things like casting a skill after moving, drinking a health potion, casting evade, cast the same non-channeled skill 3 times in a row, your minion and companion kill an enemy or they die, casting an ultimate skill granting 150. And then you have things like the knock rune, which is inflicting a crowd control that isn't a slower chill, spending 5% of your maximum resource, losing 1% of your life, becoming injured or crowd controlled, gaining 1,000 resource, which is pretty amazing, especially when you combine it together with some of these lower ones where the overflow can actually come into play and make some really magic things happen. Like, for instance, if you use this with the meteorites, all of a sudden you go from casting like 1 or 2 meteorites to like 40 or 50 meteorites, which is absolutely insane. In the case of the wolves, with the spirit wolves, if you meet the requirement of summoning only at 100, you only get 1 wolf. But if you use the Theo rune, you get 10 wolves summoned relatively quickly. And all of this can actually be absolutely amazing in terms of like what you can achieve. Now, every single character is going to get different effect with these. Like, for instance, if you have lots of cooldowns, you might want to use the Yule rune, which is going to get you the cast a skill with a cooldown, grants you 50 offering. Or if you're using a non-channeled core skill that you're spamming, you get 25 offering with that, and so forth and so on. And there are so many really good ones in here in terms of like what they can potentially do for your character. that it's kind of impossible to go over all of the potential combinations. How many combinations are there? There's basically about 476 combinations, give or take one or two. I'm not entirely sure. But I know for a fact that it's somewhere around that number, and that means that there are just a lot of fun things that you can do with the characters. Let me go over some of those things that I have accomplished in today's session from my own theory crafting. So on this particular character, I've created an Earthquake Barbarian. The general gist of the idea is to get as many Earthquakes as I possibly can. So I'm utilizing the Tech Rune, which allows me to summon forth Earthquakes, in combination with the Lith Rune, which is the one that allows you to generate resource while standing still. This means that I can get a large amount of resource by just simply not moving, which allows me to spawn Earthquakes in a gradual, way. So I'm just getting Earthquakes naturally. I'm also utilizing the chance to summon 2 Earthquakes, making them last longer, getting, obviously a bigger size on the Earthquakes and so forth and so on. And on top of that, I'm also utilizing this one here, which is the Zan Eom, which is going to make it so that every time I cast an ultimate skill, I'm going to reduce the cooldowns of my abilities, which is going to help me in terms of casting more Earthquakes. So I've got Ground Stomp for Earthquakes, I've got Leap for Earthquakes, utilizing things like the aspect of the Bull Kathos, which is going to give me an Earthquake every single time I leap. I'm also utilizing the Earthquake aspect, which gives me an Earthquake, the Earthquake aspect here, which is going to give me an Earthquake every single time I use my Ground Stomp. And so forth and so on. So I can use this to my advantage to get as many Earthquakes as I possibly can. I'm even using the Ariat's Bearing, which allows Korlik to create Earthquakes in the process. And let me show you the results of my tireless labor in crafting the ultimate Earthquake build, which is not fully min-maxed, to be perfectly honest. But let me take you into the training room and we're going to show some of this stuff off. I also have a Bone Spirit Necromancer, a Meteor Sorceress, a Stun Grenade Rogue, which is really fun. And we're gonna go over some of these, and we're gonna play around. I also have one that's basically based on the Spirit Wolves as well. And when you see this one, you're gonna laugh. All right, don't blame me if the servers blow up. Okay, it's not my fault. No, seriously, don't blame me if the servers blow up. All right, so let's go ahead and grab some multiple training dummies, and we're going to start getting our rotation running. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attack. I'm going to summon my ancients. We're going to leap. We're going to ground stomp. We're going to leap. We're going to kick. We're going to leap. We're going to kick. We're going to leap. And we're going to get all of our little earthquakes running all at one time. And as you can see, we've got quite a large number of earthquakes going and large numbers of damage just constantly proccing because there's so many earthquakes and they are all overlapping. Every single one of these earthquakes is like double spawning. So every single time I spawn one earthquake, 2 is spawning instead. And all of the earthquakes are just there's probably some sort of cap on the number of earthquakes, and I'm sure that I'm reaching it. And to make matters even worse, because of the way that I have this set up, and I set it up so well, I don't even really need to actually do anything. Which is probably an issue, and they might fix it. But let me show you what I mean, but I don't need to do anything. So if I just stand here, and I don't actually do anything, it takes a couple seconds for it to get going. I've created a monster. And this is actually a really fun build that's just designed around earthquakes and using the Tech Rune, as well as the Lith Rune, which is a really nice rune as well. And this is not the end of the craziness that I've created. There are more. I know. Let's go take a look at the Stun Grenade Rogue next, which is actually a really fun one. In terms of like the sheer number of stun grenades that I'm putting on the ground. So the general gist of the build, for those of you who are unaware, is there are a lot of aspects that can potentially give you stun grenades. Free stun grenades, like lots and lots of stun grenades. So I was like, you know what, well, what would happen if I just like stacked tons of stun grenades, got all the stun grenades that I could potentially ask for, and just kept on stacking more stun grenades? Like, is that a stun grenade in your pocket, or are you just happy to stun me? And what is the result? Well, this is the results of my tireless effort of trying to get as many stun grenades as I can. There may be stun grenades popping out of the screen at some point, so be careful. Now, to give you kind of like an example of how many different ways I can get stun grenades before we get into the nitty gritty and we actually start working with this stun grenade build. Like, first off, I have stun grenades that spawn every single time I evade. Okay. I have stun grenades that spawn every single time I shadow step. I have stun grenades that spawn every single time I use an ultimate. I have stun grenades that spawn on a % chance whenever I use my core skill. I also have stun grenades that spawn when I reach certain requirements in terms of the abilities that I'm using. So, for instance, for this particular character, I decided to go with the Fio-Neer. Fio-Neer is where when I take damage and I become injured, I go into a concealment, which is going to stealth me up, and that's going to give me lots of bonuses. And it actually helps me a lot when I'm not in the training room, but this one's not going to work here. The other one that I'm utilizing is the Xantun. The Xantun is going to make it so that every single time I cast an ultimate, I'm going to invoke the rogue stun grenades with a overflow of 50 points, which is going to be really nice. So when you put it all together, what do you get, right? Let's take a look, shall we? And what do you get? And what do you got? Come on down and tell me what to do. And what do you get? And what do you got? All the stun grenades in the world, my friend. And this is just one of the many things. Now, a lot of the times you can't even see the stun grenades. So sometimes what I do is I stand back here so you can actually see them, because they actually spawn kind of around me. And you start to see like all the crazy things that I'm actually pulling off like on a regular basis. You start to see some of the stun grenades spawn around me, the traps that start to spawn around me. I'm getting tons of poison traps for free. I'm getting tons of the actual like caltrops for free. I'm getting all sorts of crazy things for free that are happening because of this build. It's a silly build. I just wanted to see what would happen if I did tons and tons of stun grenades, and well, it works. You can do tons of stun grenades. It's actually not even a bad build. It actually scales some pretty good content. Next on the list of things I was able to do with the Runewords, I wanted to test out, like, for instance, what it would be like to have a Meteor Sorceress. Now, I didn't really go full bore into this one. I didn't do, like, the glyphs and all the other things that you need to really get the Meteor Sorceress pumping as far as damage is concerned, but I set up it enough to kind of, like, get an idea of how ridiculous it would be. So one of the things that I wanted to test with this one was I wanted to test the rune word known as Ton, I believe, or yeah, Ton. So I'm using Yule Ton, which is cast a skill with a cooldown, gives you 50 resource, and that of course spams your meteorites when you're doing it. So you get like these little meteorites coming down constantly. I'm using the meteor skill with the Starfall Coronet, the meteor aspect, the enchantment for the meteors, and pretty much everything else that you can grab in terms of like spamming as many meteors and meteorites that you possibly can. And the result is very pretty. It could be better because I need more cooldown reduction, which I don't have. But that's not to say that it's not impossible to get more. I think I had, depending on which cooldowns you're using, there's definitely some more that could be done. Let me take 1 point real quick from, just for the time being. We'll take some from warmth because that's just heals anyway. I'm just going to grab another cooldown so we have one more cooldown to add to the mix, right? So we're going to take ice armor and we'll put this down here. So that way we have an additional cooldown to get as many of these as we can. Because every time we press a cooldown, every single time we press a cooldown, we're going to get meteors. So the way that this works is we're just spamming as many cooldowns as we can. We want those cooldowns just pumping, right? So just to give you an example, if I use a cooldown at any point, we get meteors, right? So you got 2 little meteors, came down, boop, just hit the target, right? Not that big of a deal, right? But let's do the multiple training dummies and let's start like pumping out as many meteors as we can. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm gonna start doing a little bit of this, a little bit more meteors, get a little fire going on in there. Start pumping some of those. Hit every cooldown we possibly can. Of course, our cooldown reduction could be a hell of a lot better. and I will obviously admit that, because definitely you could get even more meteorites on the screen if you did it with a different way. Now, there might be a better combination than this. Maybe running the cooldown specifically might not be the best option. Maybe I might be better off with something else. But that's kind of like the beauty of it, is that there's so many different ways that you can potentially take advantage of this. It's just really freaking cool. Like, let me show you what the Fio looks like. So I'm going to show you what the Fio looks like real quick, which is really neat. The Fio actually makes tons of meteors fall down out of the sky. And, or actually, you know, we can do, I think there's one that we can use repeatedly, which is actually really neat too. It's called Neo. I think it's the Neo one. Let's do the Neo one instead, because the Neo one is really neat. And what the Neo one does is it makes it so that you get a like as long as you don't take damage within a certain period of time, so it does require you not to take damage, but as long as you don't take damage within a certain area of time, you actually get some pretty nice amount of offering. It's 300 offering, and we're going to throw that one in there, and we're going to put the meteorite in with the Neo. I'm pretty sure that's a Matrix reference, by the way, because, you know, the whole not getting hit thing. And what did Neo do in the Matrix movies? He was all dodging bullets and stuff, right? So, like, if you dodge bullets and you don't get hit, then you're going to get the Neo effect, and it's going to be really nice. So how does the Neo effect work? Well, the Neo effect is basically just like this. You attack once. If you're not taking damage for 5 seconds, the Neo effect starts to activate, and as long as you continue to not take damage for 5 seconds, every 5 seconds it will spawn and force meteors to come down. And as you can see, they're also causing my lucky hits to proc, so I'm getting additional things happening, like the firewalls are procking. I'm also getting, like, potentially meteors that are falling down from the enchantments, and it's actually a pretty nice, steady amount of meteors, right? So then we start adding in some of our meteors, and we start getting more. Right, so we're just going to keep adding in more of our meteors as well into the equation to try and get more of whatever we can. And you just have this steady stream barrage of meteors just falling on a regular basis all the frickin' time, no matter what you're doing. And this is hardly min-max. More cooldown reduction would be great. A perfect Starfall Coronet would be amazing. Obviously, with the 4 seconds on there is what you would really want. Stacking as much cooldown reduction as you possibly can to get that cooldown of the meteor as low as you possibly could. And once you got the meteor as low as we possibly could, along with the other things, it might be better to actually move back over to the cooldown one, because then you could spam so many meteors with so many cooldowns, you would get so many extra meteorites that it would be worth it more to go with the cooldown side of things. Then I decided to do oh yeah, if you're not standing near monsters, it just kind of looks like Armageddon all around you. It's really cool. I actually really like it. I also tested out a Bone Spirit Necromancer. So I wanted to see what I could potentially achieve with a Bone Spirit Necromancer. I remade my Necromancer and had a little fun with him. Of course, he seems to be missing his armor, but that's okay. And let's play around with him real quick, and let's see what kind of craziness we can get up with him. I believe I was able to hit somewhere around like 200 million, I think it's 300 million on a couple occasions. He seems to be missing his Apants. Ah, yes, because I was testing out things on this particular character, that's right. I can show you some of the fun stuff that I was playing with, like the Spirit Wolves. So before we get into how his character works, we can show you like the difference between 2 runes and how they function by creating completely different scenarios, right? So a completely different like ritual rune along with the invocation creates such a different result that it makes such an amazing change that you can honestly build around it. It's so freaking cool. So the Spirit Wolves. If you use the Lith rune, which is a rather interesting one, the Lith rune allows you to earn resource by simply standing still. I talked about that one with the Earthquake Barbarian. And with the Summon Spirit Wolves, you basically get 1 Spirit Wolf every 100 offering that lasts for 8 seconds. If I put the Lith rune in here and I stand still, what you'll notice is that I get basically about 1 wolf every second. And I can stack up to basically about 8 wolves, and once I have 8 wolves, they start to disappear, but I'm also still stacking them as long as I'm standing still. Obviously, if I start moving, they stop stacking and they will start disappearing, and they don't really stick around for that much longer, right? Another thing with these Spirit Wolves is that they dish out ice damage. So if you're standing next to a monster, of course, they're going to attack, and they're going to freeze the target, which is really cool. So then you're going to have the monster constantly getting cold damage. These are literally the spirit wolves from Diablo 2. They are the ones that dish out cold damage, and they're really cool. Now, if you're utilizing something like the Theo rune instead, which is a very powerful rune that gives you 1,000 resource in a single event, which can trigger very often because it's crowd control or injured. But to do the injured with the really easiest way is just to set the dummy to attack me, and I'm going to walk within range, right? So I'm going to walk over here, and dummy's going to hit me. And then, bam, 10 spirit wolves come out of the shadows to assault the person who hit me like freaking linebackers on a freaking football field to let that guy know that, he's not allowed to do that, which makes it into almost a very defensive thing where you have these wolves that are going to come out and save you in the case of a very dangerous thing. And of course they could be stacked together with other stuff, like for instance you could set up a wolf army, and I have one of those, so if you stick around you'll see my wolf army. Let me go ahead and put on the runes that I actually use for this particular build. So we're going to use the Blood Moon Breaches, and I'm utilizing the materials with Pock Cax. I think that's Cax anyway. This one is Voracious Reckless Sacrifice, which is spending 1,000 of your maximum resource, 1,000% of your maximum resource, causes your next non-basic skill to deal double damage. Then I'm also utilizing the Yule Lum, which is casting a skill with a cooldown, causes you to restore one primary resource, but it only costs one offering. That's it, right? But I'm using a rune that actually gives me 50 offering, which means it's now going to overflow and it's going to restore more back to me than what it actually states. So for every 5 resource that you're getting, you're going to restore 1 primary resource back, and 5 into 50, you just multiply that out and you get a rather large amount of resource back whenever you cast a cooldown. So for instance, like if I'm, let me just go ahead and fire my Dujank off into the distance here. And if I use a cooldown, like for instance Bone Prison, I'm going to get resource back specifically for using Bone Prison. I'm going to get resource back for using the Bone Storm. I'm going to get resource back for firing my Bone Spirit. Like the whole 9 yards. Everything is going to give me resource back, so it's going to be very nice. And let's go ahead and heal myself back up here. And I'm going to show you what this character is capable of. So let's go to multiple training dummies. Let's bring it to elites. And we're going to start our rotation here. So we need our minions back because we sacked them for the tests, which we do not want to sack our minions. We want to keep our minions. We love our minions. So we want this one and this one. And I'm going to put you back on the bar here. Let's go ahead and grab our minions back up so we actually have our maximum resource. And we're going to disable the dummy attacks for right now. Alright, so now we're ready for our rotation. Let's go. Is that not too shabby, right? With the runes, I'm able to cause my Bone Spirit to grab double damage if I spend the resource. And you can see the runes down here. You can see them counting. Right? So as I use my abilities, like as I fire off my Bone Spirit, you see that I'm activating the effects. And you can see them slowly gathering up until they actually activate. And then once they activate, big boy chonky numbers, right? And I've seen as high as I think like 300 million on this, like really trying to get my rotation like down packed. But it's been a really fun design trying to get, number one, obviously the restoring of the resource to make sure that I have my resource full when I'm casting my Bone Spirit. And then also, of course, the ability to double my damage whenever I'm firing off an attack like that's fulfilling the conditions of that one, which is really nice. So I'm getting these really big chunky boy Bone Spirits. Then I wanted to set up an army. I'm like, you know what? I want to set up a like spirit wolf sort of a character. and like just like wolf army kind of thing, like as many minions as I possibly can. Like back in the old days of Diablo 2, where you would spam as many skeletons as you could, spam as many revives as you could, spam as many, like get your golem up and your mercenary and like you get your mages. And what did they used to call them back in the day? Do you guys remember what they used to call them? They used to call them the Lagromancer. I thought it would be fun to try and build like a Lagro Druid. And, so I did it. So I wanted to try and see if I could build a Lagro Druid and like make it into a fun character. And I think I did a pretty good job. So we're gonna bring him over there, and I'm gonna kind of play around with him. So what I did with him is I did the Pugilistic Heart of the Oak, which is casting a cooldown that grants you +3 to all skills for 5 seconds. That's using the Yule and the Vex rune. And then I'm also utilizing the Neo and the Seh, which is where I get the 300 as long as I'm not taking any damage, and it summons multiple wolves each time I'm not taking any damage. So it's 3 wolves per 5 seconds. I think I might actually be better off with the other one. Let's actually swap this because I think this one is nice. I think the Yule, or sorry, not the Yule. I think the Neo is a good one, but I think for my specific build, I would probably be better off with the Neo, which we might have to actually go grab it. In the PTR right now, you can basically just grab any of these runes, by the way, and you can test out and have fun with a lot of them. There is a box, you can just grab it, and they basically give you all the runes for testing purposes. They're still working on, obviously, balancing out some of them and trying to make some of them more valuable, but I think they've done a really good job so far. I'm actually very, very impressed. So let's grab all the runes again. And we're going to grab these. Got the nice Ohm rune in there and the Lum rune. And let's kind of put some of these back in here because we don't have enough room to carry all these. So, unfortunately, there's more runes than my consumable inventory tab is able of holding. And we do have, I'm so glad that we do have a consumable inventory tab. Dear Lord Jesus, I am very happy about that. Because if we didn't, then that would be very unfortunate because there are a lot of runes and there are a lot that you're going to want to hold on to. So let's change this out. We're going to change out for the wolves. We're going to put the wolves back here. But we're going to grab the Lith. The Lith rune is a very nice one for this, which is the standing still generates a really nice amount of resource. So we're going to play around with that one. And let's go in here and let's actually take a look and see how this looks when we're in here with our like full army smacking the crap out of everything. Of course, I think there's something wrong with the test room because it doesn't allow me to summon my full army. But I get some of the wolves. I don't get all of them, but I don't get the ones that come from like the aspect, it seems like. So in this particular case, we're going to stand still and we're going to get as many of these wolves as we can. As you can see, we've got the wolves, we've got our wolves specifically, and we're also going to be spamming the actual wolves that we have. We're going to use our new Storm Ravens, which are pretty cool. And we're also going to use our Poison Creeper. And it's actually pretty freaking awesome just looking at the wolves. Like, I'm going to stop casting for a little bit so it's a little bit more obvious. But you can see all of the Spirit Wolves just in there, just doing their thing, freezing targets, attacking things, constantly active. You got all the werewolves in there. My ravens are constantly attacking. I mean, it's basically a companion druid from Diablo 2, like all over again. We've got our wonderful companion druid back. And honestly, he's a lot more powerful than he was in Diablo 2, because the companion druid wasn't very powerful in Diablo 2, to be perfectly honest. I mean, even if you farmed up all the equipment that you possibly could with your companion druid, there was very much so a chance that you just weren't going to get access to what you wanted. I mean, farming isn't always the end-all be-all of things, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just don't get your stuff.
Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
In the end, though, I really do like the runes. I think that they're a very good addition to the game. I think they add a lot of build diversity. And sorry, I was going to get away from that because they were being really loud. They add a lot of build diversity and very interesting things that you can accomplish with your characters. This is only like a small taste of what I've been able to accomplish. And there are definitely a hell of a lot more complicated combinations. And I also get the feeling from the conversation that I had with the developers during my live stream that they are looking forward to making even more combinations and more fun things that you can do with these runes. Also, there are ones that they, may be tweaking in the future. I think that they have a really nice system here that could grow into something even more amazing than what we currently have. I really, really like the blue runes. Like the blue runes originally, when I first saw them, I'm like, these are just magic runes. They're just garbage. Like they're probably going to do things that nobody wants. They're not going to be very effective. And boy, was I wrong. Some of the blue runes, when used in combination with the Overflow system, are some of the most powerful runes, and they are absolutely amazing. I also severely underestimated the ritual runes. I thought the ritual runes at first, I was like, well, it's just like how I get my offering, right? It's just how I get my resource. How is that really fun? But then I started to think about it kind of like how I did in Diablo 2, which is, well, like if I built around something, I would obviously be trying to optimize the way that I was achieving that, right? Like if I'm trying to get, say, static field proc from a crescent moon in Diablo 2, I would optimize my attack speed so I would attack faster to try and make sure that I was hitting the target and up my attack rating and whatnot to optimize my overall chances of getting as many static field procs as I possibly could. I might even wield 2 of them on a Barbarian, right, to get more static field procs in that way. And speaking of wielding 2 of them, you can't wield 2 of the same rune in any combination. So you are always going to be using 2 different rune sets, and you cannot use the same rune in either set, even if the set is different. So in any way, like whenever you're setting up your specific thing, like you're not going to be able to use, say, for instance, 2 Spirit Wolf ones together, or 2 Rogue ones, because that would just be too spammy. And probably also for other reasons like blowing up the server and whatnot, which I'm assuming would be kind of crazy. On top of this, you can only make 2 Runewords and 2 items. Now, you can make them in any slot that is technically 2 sockets, and they also made the helmet 2 sockets for this purpose. So you can put the rune word in your helmet, you can put it in your armor, you can put it in your pants, your weapon, like if you have a 2-handed weapon. Barbarians kind of have an advantage in this. Of course, barbarians have an advantage, don't they? They have an advantage because they have 2 2-handed weapons, which means they don't have to give up any of their armor slots for the thing, or they can choose back and forth between which one they want. Do they want to use their armor slot, or do they want to use their weapon slot? I have a feeling that the barbarians are going to use their weapon slot over the armor because of those really nice grand gems that give large amounts of main stat, which is going to help obviously pump your damage up, which is very nice. I also did some very interesting testing. So I wanted to ask a question. This is all about testing, right? And I wanted to pose that question and find out the answer. What was the question that I asked? Well, I asked the question of, what if I wanted to use a non-class ability on a class, but still get some of the benefits that that class is getting for that class ability? And you might be wondering what the hell I'm talking about. Well, like take a Sorceress, for instance. Let's say I was using the Earthquake glyph, and I don't have the Earthquake glyph on right now, but I wanted to find out whether or not I could temper on, like, for instance, Earthquake duration or Earthquake size or something onto a Sorceress piece of equipment from the Barbarian. So I took a staff over to my Barbarian, tempered on the Earthquake duration, brought it back to my Sorceress, put it on my Sorceress, and tested it, and sure enough, the Earthquake got a longer duration because it was on the staff tempered by the Barbarian. So there was a similar thing that happened back in season, I think it was 3 when they first introduced the tempering, is people were going over to other characters to temper things onto their weapon that wasn't available on the ones that they had. Well, Yeah, you can do that for things like earthquake duration. You can do that for like anything that's technically a skill that's on another class that has anything that enhances it. You can, of course, like use this to your advantage and enhance it through those temper recipes, and it does in fact work. I've played around with it and actually counted it out to make sure that the earthquakes were actually lasting longer, and that was actually pretty cool as well. I mean, overall, the Runewords have been probably the best thing about the PTR so far. Playing around with them, coming up with interesting combinations. I honestly can't wait to see them come out with more invocation runes. I do feel like a lot of the ritual runes are in a good place, but there's some of them that need some tweaking. And I have a feeling that due to the feedback that we're getting now, especially, and I would recommend that you give feedback, we're probably going to see tweaking to these. And that's a good thing because some of these might not necessarily be in the best place, and some of them are like honestly really good. Like this one right here, the Bach rune. If you're a like whirlwind barbarian or a dancing blades rogue, or any character that really gets a lot of movement in a battle, like maybe you're using twisting blades or something, like and you're just all over the place, you can get tons of offering just by running around. And so the more you run around, the more it works. It's actually really really nice. Um, trying to think if there's anything else I can talk about here. Drop rates. So they do seem to be dropping fairly well. I'm gonna do like a full playthrough. I think tomorrow, like after I go watch the Beetlejuice movie. I want to watch the Beetlejuice movie. I was gonna watch it today, but the Runewords were coming out today, so we're watching the Beetlejuice movie tomorrow. But I want to do like a kind of like a full playthrough on like a character and just kind of count up how many runes I find and like what quality I find, like how many magics, how many rares, how many legendaries, etc. I do know that also that the runes are going to be used in crafting the mythic items. So if you guys are unaware, you can use runes to craft mythic items. You need 10 of each rune of the same type to craft a mythic item. And to do that, I believe you go to the alchemist, or which one was it that was the jeweler? I think it's the jeweler. And there's recipes in there to craft mythic items if you have those. So what you need is you need where is it? Mythics. There it is. You need 10 magic of the same type, 10 rare of the same type, and 10 legendary of the same type, plus one resplendent spark, only one. And that gets you a friggin' mythic, which is actually a really nice recipe. So you don't need to actually collect 4 sparks. You'll need 1 spark, and then you just need to collect 10 of each rune type. And of course, there's going to be runes that are, like standouts for this. Like you're going to maybe collect specific ones for this purpose. There's also the ability to craft the runes too, so you can obviously combine 3 runes of the same type. So if I go in my inventory here and I grab out some of these runes, like let's take one that has a nice stack of 3. So we're going to take the Zek rune. Grand Nagus Zek. For you Star Trek fans. I'm a nerd, okay? Shush. And we're going to combine together my Zek runes, and we're going to make a legendary rune. So there we go. I think, what was that, a Zan? So I got a Zan rune from that. So we combine them together. It's an 85% chance to grant a random rune of a rare quality and a 15% chance to grant a random rune of a legendary quality. So you have a chance to upgrade. Similar to the way in Diablo 2 that you could put 3 runes into the Herodric Cube, and you could, of course, upgrade them to the next tier. Of course, it would still take you like a billion or trillion runes to go from an L to a Zod, but, that's neither here nor there. Not going to take you a trillion probably to get what you want in this one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's just so much that I still want to test, and this is really just the first day. There are some Spiritborn abilities in here, like Spiritborn's Concussive Stomp. You can get Dark Shroud Shadows, which is amazing. Earthen Bulwark from the Druid for Barbarians. A 20% maximum life bonus. That should be really good for you Thorns Barbarians, stacking Thorns. There's the Countering Concealment, which is really nice, so basically stealth for everybody. Challenging Shout, which is a really nice taunt. The Mystical Frost Nova, which allows you to basically just like spam Frost Novas all over the place. It's really cool. Obviously, freezing everything. The Horrid Decrepify, which is the throwback to Diablo 2 of getting access to Decrepify on like the Lawbringer, and I mean that's a really amazing one. The Restore Evade charges, which could be useful for specific builds. I was actually thinking about this with the Stun Grenade Rogue, because she actually has the ability to spawn stun grenades every time she evades, so more evades could potentially be good for her. There's the Spiritborn's Vortex to pull in, which is really nice if you just need a pull in for your character, which definitely helps you get like lots of pull ins. And then there's also the one that lets you double your damage for your non-basics cast. The magic ones are really interesting too, like the Dancing Bolts. I really kind of want to show you the Dancing Bolts before we end this, so let me pull these out real quick, and I'm going to try and show you these, because I want to show you the Fio rune combined with the Dancing Bolts, because it's such a fun combination. So we'll do that here in a second, and we'll play around with that. There's also the legendaries, which do things like reduce cooldowns, give you the Druid's Petrify ultimate, which is really good for critical strike damage if you're doing critical strike builds, because you get a huge critical strike bonus. You get +3 to all skills with the Vex rune. Your next cast will be a guaranteed critical strike and overpower. This one's really good if you're trying to like focus as much damage into one ability as you can. You also get the enhanced Warcry, which also gives you berserking. Because it is the enhanced Warcry, so it gives you 4 seconds of berserking whenever it triggers, which is a multiplier, by the way, and a movement speed increase. And there's also, of course, the Jaw rune, which, you know, a lot of people are familiar with the Enigma from Diablo 2. It's literally going to give you the evade as a teleport, and so whenever you trigger this, you're going to turn your evade into a teleport, and the next time that you evade, it will be a teleport instead. And every class in the game basically can now get access to teleport, which is really cool. I'm overall very impressed, and I would love to see like small changes here and there to them, but it would take me a while to kind of like really go over each one. I might have to actually do like a whole video, basically, just like going over each one and what I think maybe could be like slight tweaks to them. But overall, I'm very impressed. Very impressed with the runes. I like them a lot, and I do want to show you this one before we exit out here. So this one reminds me of, I think I already said it, but it reminds me of the Diablo 1 Nova that the Sorcerer used to cast, and I just think it's so cool. Let's take this one. We're gonna take and we're gonna put the Dancing Bolts in, and we're gonna head over to the training grounds. Now, the way that this one works is you get 1,000 resource whenever you're injured or you're crowd controlled, and it spawns the Dancing Bolts. The Dancing Bolts spawn around you in a circle, like a Nova, and then they proceed outward from you from that point. Now, at a certain point in the Nova, they actually start to seek out targets to attack, and at that point, they no longer look like the Diablo 1 Nova as they start to seek out targets, which is actually really cool in the way that they work, but it's a lot of bolts, and I don't even think I can count them all. Maybe somebody can freeze frame it for me and count them for me. But let's go ahead and see what they look like real quick. I'm going to set the attacks up here. I'm going to let the training dummy wallop me one. And as you can see, there's just tons and tons of bolts coming out. Now, the Fio rune does have a cooldown of 15 seconds, and it's going to take a little bit before that recharges, so I can get another one of those big, giant lightning attacks coming out. But it could be very interesting for any character that scales lightning damage. And as you can see, they all turn around and they start attacking the training dummy, which is going to make this really nice. Now, I actually kind of did like a freeze frame on it earlier in one of the live streams, and it's so cool when you see it coming out initially, because it really is a thick boy circle of dancing bolts that comes out around you. And it's actually been very impressive playing around with these and just kind of getting an idea of what you can achieve with these, on what characters you could potentially take advantage of them. Not all of them are going to be pit 100 scalers, right? Not all of them are going to get you to the highest pit in the entire game. But there's a lot of these that are really fun. And there's a Diablo 4 motto that the developers have been spouting for a while, and I always kind of rolled my eyes when they said it, and they were like, you know, find the fun. Like, try not to kill the fun, find the fun. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, these new runes, these new rune words, they're fun. They found the fun, okay? And that is probably the simplest way that I can explain that they're very good. I am looking forward to Season 6 because of these. I am very excited to, like, try out and make all sorts of crazy builds with these runes. I'm actually hoping they add more, to be perfectly honest. Because they got so many cool combinations here, but I think one of the things that could be really interesting is more cross-class abilities. I do like the cross-class abilities. I think they're pretty neat, and they're gonna start working in really nicely once we start getting the Spiritborn class. You know, obviously we eventually are gonna get more runes. They're gonna balance them a little bit for Season 6, so they're not obviously perfect right now, and the community feedback is gonna change them. So we're gonna get even more cool stuff, I'm sure. That's just my initial impressions of the Runewords. I wanted to put this out here same day as I did it so that I kind of kept everything fresh in my mind. Sorry for the length of the video, but you know, there's a lot to talk about with this kind of stuff. And I hope I showed you enough examples to give you an idea of how cool they can be. Anyway, as always, I'd appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these videos. Be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.